Okay, thank you. Yeah, so I met Steve in 2020, as I said, when Steve gave this amazing workshop in assembled writing for an online printing book festival that my colleagues and I at the Centre for Print Research organised. And after this, we started corresponding to see if we could form a project idea. And at the same festival, Pat talked to us about his latest publication, which was the Stunning 2020 Vision. And this publication marked the centenary of the Society of Wood Inbreakers. So I've known Pat and John Randle since 2013, when I began a research study investigating artist publications that use letterpress printing. And over the years, I've spent many days visiting and printing at the press. And what interests me are all those activities, processes, the practice of letterpress, things that go on and happen in the space behind the finished book. So I enjoy carefully curating and facilitating introductions and projects and events. So after a while, I proposed to Steve that we collaborate on a project with Pat, which became the Printed Poetry Project, a purposely open project, but one leading to a publication, the process of which would be organic. And this is a page from Steve's website about the Printed Poetry Project, which he's dedicated to it. So in May 2021, Steve spent a week in Bristol and Cheltenham working with me at the university, and then introduced to Pat at the Whittington Press. And we all talked and we formed ideas, and we welcomed visitors as well to the press. And boundaries for our first publication were set visually by a printing rule and our decision to utilise what materials we had in the press. We found some unexpected guidance in John's used printing blocks and the waste sheets of Matrix 36. And Steve composed poems in 24 hours and based around the week at the press, and we began typesetting. We had good times and feelings of freedom after the confinement of the previous 12 months. And in October that year, in 2021, we launched this book, which was 25 poems, in addition of 50 copies, at a printed poetry symposium, which was held at the Arnolfini Gallery, and with a parallel event at the Letterpress Collective. We wanted to extend our collaboration after this publication, and I have brought a copy of 25 poems to afterwards. So we decided on a new publication project, which has resulted in this publication, The Hyphen is a Dagger, longer title printed here. Visual boundaries with rule were set again, and the decision to use wood letter, which was a collection stored at Thomas Mayo's workshop in the Cotswolds, made for an innovative approach to writing, editing, and typesetting, which you'll see here.
Just go straight to the human name, because it's in without different spaces as maybe Printed response to the error for the statement of the name.
Well, let's put it up very small online.
I mean, I think maybe we take out the year and also the immediate way to involve.
I have no idea. That's quite cool.
I think it's much bigger than I think I thought when I read the poem. Or we can find an alternative to it in a whole.
We might need to cut this out a bit, see?
Yeah,
Good.
a whole.
than the 1.5 minutes that I've shared with you.
Thank you.
Yes. Just need to make sure I saw that tweet.
Angie, thank you so much. What an amazing thing. The terrible thing about that video was that I've never seen my haircut from behind before. And to see it that size, what am I thinking? It doesn't look very good. I'm going to do something about it. So that's extremely helpful. So I have 5 minutes now to talk about my role in it a little bit, and I want to waffle a little bit about writing poetry in general. How do I find myself in the space of collaborating with people like Pat and Angie? And as Becky alluded to, I'm active. I like to collaborate a lot. I like to go out and take poetry as an active, morphing, changeable thing into different environments, to collaborate with different specialties. And there's a particular irony, I think, not that I have a great deal of expertise, perhaps less than all of you about letterpress, a tiny bit, but letterpress seems to be the place to me where poetry becomes its most ossified, where it becomes its most enshrined, and seems to connect to a philosophy which I rail against, which I think is useful to share, to just somehow bounce some idea into your mind that might be interesting about poetry. It seems to me, I'm not a modernist poet, but around the era of modernism, there's a split in poetry with processes. One, the poet born a genius, alone with inspiration, being touched by a moment of inspiration, and then dumping out a golden, magical turd of genius poetry that wins all the awards. And then something else. The poet is a mulcher of language, someone who's hypersensitive to the language that surrounds them, that their role is to go out into the world, having expertise only from their concentration and exposure on the process of stealing, remaking, eating, shaping words. And what attracted me to be a poet in my mid-20s, or later than a lot of poets start, is the latter model. Because while in essence it might be the same thing, in practice it is very different. For the poet who wants to be a mulcher is happy for their words to change in front of them when their two friends are saying there isn't enough wood-type letters A. That poet is not worried whether their initial vision represents their soul or some perfect inspiration. In fact, they are delighted and excited that the mysterious thing which finishes all poems, all creative things, is other people with other expertises. Because when I teach poetry at Kingston University and other places, I cannot help people with the fundamental question of first, how they write a good poem, and second, why some people think one thing's good and another person thinks it's terrible. The elements of creation and taste remain mysterious. They are neurobiologically or metaphysically remarkable. You lose time, you're in a moment, you're writing, you look back at what you've done, it's like someone else has done it. In fact, being good at writing is terrible, you lose your life. I wouldn't advise it. You have to stay in all day typing. So my understanding and interest in that process then is that every time a poem's being written, a mysterious process is taking place almost to you, and when you're collaborating, the other people are doing it with you. So the decisions on what you're doing with your text don't represent you, but represent opening yourself up to the universe. What is the process of this poetry? I happen to be in Poitiers, I happen to read about Guillaume, I happen to be visiting Angie and Pat and find out there's a Crusader buried next door. They happen to be interested in wood type. We happen to not like the colour purple. We happen to want a certain kind of paper. Chance, operation, drives creativity. And in my opinion, an artist, a poet, a printer who is happy and content, maybe not necessarily good or bad, but who's to say, is the one that embraces that chance. In so doing, we lose certain things. The discipline, the ossification, the perfection. This is great. But in the modern world with the internet, it's gone anyway. There is nobody at the top of the totem pole as much as the Guardian and the newspapers scratch their nails and prizes still get awarded. Creativity is flattened and there's a billion people creating a billion things. So what is interesting, I think, is to find myself in an environment, every day if I can, to work with people who are decent and kind and clever and content, who have expertises which allow me to shape my words to them and with them. And that's what this book is to me. To me, unlike the people who might read it, it is not a thing, but an experience and a process. And that's kind of what we wanted to share with you this evening. And to me, therefore, it connects valuably to a wider understanding of what poetry might be for people. And finally to say, that is a democratic vision. Because instead of people thinking they can't write poetry, because it isn't the perfect line or the perfect metaphor, in fact, the language which is inside of them, in their strange mind, in their strange, fantastical world, is the best poetry. The weirder and more unique and idiosyncratic their language world, the better they'd be if only they knew it. So, hopefully that is in the poems a little bit, explains why they're weird, and shows why there is enthusiasm around this collaborative project. Thank you.
Hi. Steve and Angie have covered most of the story behind how this project evolved. But one thing I'd like to clear up before we go any further, the Whittington Press is really my dad's. I pretended it's mine. Is this mic work? Is that working?
It can do.
Oh, okay, right.
That one again.
Hi.
Wait a second. Yeah, try now.
Hello?
I'm going to try to pitch it just
Hello?
as a moment. So much more again. There you go.
Yep, hi. Yeah, much as I like to pretend that the press is mine, it really belongs to my dad, John, and there was a photo of him up there earlier. And he started the press in the 70s, and sadly he rarely comes in anymore. One day we are book printers and publishers of books, and we work for other publishers as well as publishing our own material. And there's a real definite precision about the way that we would like to think that we work. So from Monday to Friday, we're publishing books on we're using wood engravers, which have to be made ready to within a thousandth of a degree of precision when they go through the press. And the fun thing about these side projects, and this is follows on from other projects I've done with other friends. For instance, Dagger magazine with my friend Nick, and we had a poster club called the OPC. Well, I shouldn't say hat, we're still all here, but we haven't met up for a while. But it really is a lot of fun to do these side projects on a weekend, which take the mind away from that precision of the day-to-day, Monday to Friday job. And this project came about really, the idea behind it, because I was fortunate enough to come across a big stash of wood type, and being book printers, we don't really ever use wood type, but that whole collection came up. It used to belong to the Cambridge University Press, and it's been a bit bashed around with students, but it's a lovely collection and pretty complete, even though Steve complains about how many A's there might be in particular parts. It's all there. So it was a lovely excuse for us to get the whole lot printed up, proofed up, and an idea of what's in each case, and that's why the idea came into to start from the smaller size on the first page and work our way through the sizes and the scales of types available there. The other thing that came to my mind from the video is that was the first time that we'd used that proofing press as well. and we're using it daily at the moment, but that was really a good trial out for that big far proofing press, and I think I'm right in saying that machine is the only one in this country at that scale, and it was it's quite a kind of, what's the word, daunting piece of equipment to get your head around, which we have done thanks to that project. I don't really have much more to say, but I really enjoyed it, the fact that the press becomes a melting pot for poets, for authors, and the printing is the outcome of these collaborations. And long may it continue. I aspire to work in the tradition of the St Dominic's Press and other collaborative printing premises that have worked throughout the last century in this country, and that's what we're aiming to do. So becoming a meeting point for these groups is really something that I've enjoyed, and it takes us away, like I say, from the day-to-day grind of dealing with wood engravers and the pernickety printing and poetry. So I think we're going to open it up for questions now. Is that right?
A little next question with
Right, okay.
Sorry, this mic is really incremental. Okay, got it. That one.
Right.
This is just you two next.
And Angie, and
Sorry, well, okay.
This one's working.
Thanks, Becky. I believe, thanks so much, Becky. Simon very kindly will leave a little chat between us, and then we'll open it up to questions, both live and in the flesh.
You believe correctly, so that's reassuring, isn't it? I felt there needed to be some sort of segue between the moments that we're enjoying, and so I did my normal etymological deep dive on the tops and words, just to see if there was some way of moving between them. And I found out that there's a type of a style of troubadour song called a tenzo. It takes the form of a debate in which each voice defends their position. Common topics relate to love or ethics, so none of that here, I suspect. Usually the tenzo is written by two different poets, two or more, but several examples exist in which one of the parties is imaginary, including God, the poet's horse, or his cloak. And I thought that was particularly fitting for the sort of way in which we may work.
Which one is the horse?
And they're closely related and sometimes overlapping. Genres that are included in this, there are two particular ones, and there's the one I think most are. The party in which more than two voices discuss a subject, ideal. There's the content song, where the matter is eventually judged by a third party. That will be either me or the servants. And then there's the cobbler espada, or the cobbler exchange, two stanzas only, which sounds just like cobblers, frankly. So I did wonder whether or not you covered a great deal of what I might have asked, and I'm sure there'll be some questions coming in from the floor and online, but there was one thing that struck me, is that what has each of you learned from the project that's had an impact on your own practice, perhaps changing how you'll do things in the future?
I think it was really interesting filming us through the process. So when we were in Thomas Mayer's workshop, actually filming that process and seeing our decision making in live time. And I've got hours and hours of decision making. And I think it was also a real surprise to me how unprecious Steve was about the words that he started off with and the words that he ended with through that process of us having to edit down because of the availability at the time that we had, and also us trying to input into, really collaborate together. And so for me, I really felt like I could contribute to the text. I didn't think that might be the case, but it's something that, thanks to Steve and to Pat as well, where we were working all together, that was something that, I don't know whether I learned in that way, but it was something that was made possible, that was massively enjoyable as well.
We were very non-precious about the final outcome, printing-wise. There's lots of mistakes in there, and lots of upside down letters, and the problem that we had was that we only met up for maybe 3 weekends in a year, didn't we? And it's quite hard to set and print a book during that time. So the pressure was really on, there's an expression for Hilary Petler from the St. Dominic Express where he liked to get a move on in the press room, and his printing slightly looks a bit, it has an immediacy about it, which I think is a nice thing. And it's freeing to work in that way. So
it's hard, isn't it? It's hard to leave things. It's hard to leave things sometimes.
When you are pressured for all that time, it's hard to leave that in as part of the editing process and not just, if it was me on my own, I'd be redoing but as you said, it's freeing, and it gave us all something different.
For me, yeah, I mean, that's amazing that you said that. I mean, I think the balance is always you worry you want to bring a text which you believe in, that you've really worked on, but also that has the flexibility to know that it is for you and with you. That's a very important thing. And I sometimes wonder, as I said when I was talking, when people write things that they know might have to shift, let's say even a novel to a publisher before the editor gets to it, and they say, oh, you're killing me, that they not imagine the editor might disagree with every one of their decisions,